Patua kuru, patua wha, patua tatoki a tai haruru. Piki a kanai au ki runga ki tau huka nui a te whare a Tangaroa. E whati ai nuku tei maroro. E nuku tei maroro pera hoki ra kowa ko hina tu aho ana. Kimi ana. Hāhau ana i te whānau a rata. Rata i mate atu ki tāua i piko piko e whiti. Mate. Maranga mai. Ko whiti nuku tatatau rana. Whano, whano. Tau mai te Māori, hau mea hui e, tai ki e. Nā, ko te wehi ki te atua, te timatanga o te whakaaro nui. Anō reira ka mihi ake, ki a koe te pāpā nāu nei e tukuna atu te arawhata ki te runga Arawa. Hei honore, kloria ki te atua, he mau ngā rongo ki rungo ki te mata te whenua, he whakaaro pai ki a tātou katoa. O tira, ka mihi atu ki te wāhingaro, me ki rātau koe hinga atu, i ngā marama, i ngā tau, i te tau ka pahure ake nei. Nei rā mātau e mō te atea e poroporo a kiti a tonu atu ki a rātau, haere, haere, whakaoti atu. Nā ka huri ko whakaaro ki te hau kainga, Ngāti riha, aramai, rahiri. Ngāti kawa, koutou te hau kainga, tēnei au kamihi. Kamihi ki o maunga, ki o reo, ki o hapau, ki o mana. O tira kamihi ake ki a tātou katoa, ngā mana, ngā reo, ngā maunga kai wainganui i te whare, a tēnei au ka mihi ki a tātou katoa, tēnā koutou, a tēnā rā tātou katoa. Nā, ko wai tēnei e tuake nei, me ki pēnei nā, ko matawhaura te maunga, ko te roti i te kita ihinga te moana, ko te kaituna te awa, a ko Ngāti Piki ao te iwi, a heuri hoki au no Ngāti Mākino, no Tapuika, a me ki no te Arawa waka, a tēnā rā koutou katoa. Kia ora whānau. I never enjoy being part of a speaking panel that has to speak after lunch, because I realise we get a bit tired and we want to chill out. That's why I needed to start with a bit of gusto, partially to wake myself up, but also to try and keep us all awake. That said, I won't be offended if anyone falls asleep, kei te pai. I know that we learn in many ways, and you can learn in dream state. In fact, sometimes it's better, so kei te pai if you want to have a moi. Can I have the next slide, please? So I was asked to speak about exploring models of representation for Māori in local government, and also I just want to pick up on that last part of that sentence about pathways for systemic change. First thing I want to say is I'm not probably going to talk directly to models per se of representation, because for me it's not just the model, it's the whole kaupapa and the whole approach. So for me it's about ngā mātāpono te herenga o ngā tāngata. It's about the principles and values of us coming together as people, both as ourselves, as iwi and hapu, but also in our relationships with kāwanatanga, with Pākehā, with everyone that share our beautiful whenua. So the two or three things that I want to speak about is just some of the principles and considerations I've seen in the mahi that we've done within Te Arawa and the wider Bay of Plenty. And then I'll talk about a couple of examples. So one is Te Tatau o Te Arawa, which is the relationship between Te Arawa and the Rotorua Lakes Council, and also the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, which is one of only 2 councils in the whole country that have Māori wards. And I sit in one of those Māori wards in the Bay of Plenty Regional Council. We've got 3 Māori wards. The ward that I represent is essentially the Te Arawa Rohe, so the Rotorua district, and some way out to the coast and a bit back into Taupo. Next slide. I'll just go like this when I need the kapai. Okay, so I've already made that first point for us to just not think about models in itself, because the model is just the structure and the legal construct, which is a vehicle for the kaupapa. But it's not the end of the kaupapa. It's really just a vehicle that we use as we navigate through that kaupapa. And it's about relationships. So that representation model is only one part of the jigsaw puzzle. There's other mahi that you need to do. Want to encourage you to research and look at other models that are around there, but ultimately, kaya koutou te mana. You find a model that works for you. All of us in our various rohe, as we say as Māori, ko taku rohe te pito o te ao, it's the centre of the universe, and we'll all say our model is the best model, blah, blah, blah. It's important that you have a look at them. It may not fit, it may fit. Ultimately, it's up to you to decide what kind of model is going to work for you. I want to make the point that systemic change doesn't happen overnight. It's a long-term journey. So the mahi that you're doing here, wherever you are in your journey, and for me, I'm fortunate, I'm in a rohe that we're probably quite a bit further ahead in this particular journey, but wherever you are in the journey, kia kaha rā haere tonu. It's a long-term journey. Stay staunch to who you are and keep pushing forward. Be staunch, be you, be Māori. Previous speaker talked about playing politicians, painting pretty pictures. For me, I play Māori. I am Māori wherever I go. I am Māori when I sit at a council table. I am Māori when we talk about all of those kaupapa that councils have to deal with. Important that we know ourselves as hapua iwi. Like one of the previous speakers talked about ourselves being our biggest barrier. I want to hit that home too, because that's been my experience. We're really quick to have a amu at the kāwanatanga, things that have happened in the past, and rightly so. We should be hoha about some of those things. But on the same side of, on the other side of that coin, we should be hoha at ourselves at times, whānau, because we can often be our biggest barrier. We can have a lot more influence in the space if we work together. I've seen so many examples where we've cut across each other. We divide and conquer ourselves. We learnt that. We got institutionalised, learned some tricks with the pari, and then we used them on ourselves. We need to change that. We need to tidy up our own backyards at times, whānau. That'll make us stronger in this space. Think also that it's important that you gauge the political environment in your rohe, and that may influence the tactics that you use at any given time. You know, and I know that our next speaker, Andrew Judd, he's and himself and a number of councils have had some real challenges in trying to establish Māori wards. You need to kind of have a feel for what is your community like, what's the politics in your community, and what might be the right tactic for now. It might be that you want to get to Māori wards, but right now it's just going to be really hard to do that. And I'll talk a little bit more when I talk about Te Tatau o Te Arawa, because that was one of our considerations when we went through our process. Final point I want to make is be the change we want to see. Utua te kino ki te pai. You know, too often we go to a lot of these battles with the Crown or local council, and all we carry is taiaha and patu. We have one style, and it's let's scrap it out. We've actually got to demonstrate, because I think some of those styles that we're bringing to the table, they're not our styles, and they're not the right style for the kaupapa. What I see is really powerful is when we demonstrate this is how we should be as people, and then we invite them into that space, and essentially we colonize them to our way of being in a way. But it's a beautiful way of being that cares for everybody and respects everything. So I'll talk about, Te Tatau o Te Arawa. I want to start with this whakatauki from Te Arawa. Te Arawa mā ngai nui upoko whakahirahira. Te Arawa, the loud, the strong voice, and the stubborn-minded, the strong, determined people. That was really, that was a whakatauki that we carried with us as we went through this process of establishing Te Tatau o Te Arawa. I'll just go back through the history really quickly around Te Tatau o Te Arawa, and it actually starts way back in 1880. So in Te Arawa, back in 1880, Ngāti Whakaue, one of our iwi within Te Arawa, gifted about 3,500 acres of land to establish the town. And at that same time, a county borough, I'm not even sure if that's the right name, one of those old school names for councils, was established. And interestingly enough, at that time, Ngāti Whakaue were given a seat on this town board. One of 3 seats was Ngāti Whakaue. Really interesting history, because actually we started with representation within Te Arawa. We were fortunate. Really good leadership from our kaumātua at the time, our rangatira at the time. That said, only about 10 years later, the county borough changed to some other structure, because councils have gone through these slight changes in what they look like and what they call themselves. And in that process, in around the early 1890s, that seat for Ngāti Whakaue was removed. And so we didn't have any representation, Ngāti Whakaue or the Waira Te Arawa Confederation of Iwi. So it was around about 100 years before we had any formal representation back on that council. It wasn't until 1993 that the Te Arawa Standing Committee was set up. And there was about 5 years or so before that the kaupapa started, where rangatira of the time, people like Manahuia Bennett, we're really pushing council to say, we can't see our voice in here. You are doing things that are hurting our people, that are hurting our whenua, and we need to be part of your decision-making processes. And so that led to the establishment of the Te Arawa Standing Committee. That was good in the sense that we had some voice, but fast forward a good 20 years odds, around about 2009, I became a member around about that time of Te Arawa Standing Committee, And when I came in, it had, even for the last couple of terms, the last 6 years or so, many of the members on that committee had realised that it had no oomph, had really no teeth, it couldn't really affect change. And so that started some kōrero about the need to change this model, to look at a different way of this relationship between Te Arawa and the council. There were a few things that happened around that time too that made it easier for us to get the Te Tatau o Te Arawa partnership across the line. I'll speak about them really briefly. So one was in 2012, and where I'm from, around the Lake Rotoiti, Rotomā, Rotoehu, the council wanted to put a wastewater treatment plant there and have a reticulated sewage scheme because everyone's on septic tanks. They had been talking with us as iwi about potentially finding some land and our views on how the scheme should go. And then they just stopped talking to us all of a sudden. And then we find out they'd just gone and purchased a bit of private land in our rohe, and there's not much private land. We're fortunate, about 90% of our whenua is still Māori land, but they managed to find a little parcel in the Pākehā that was willing to sell it to them. So they bought this land, didn't tell us, and then all of a sudden we find out, we're going to put this treatment plant on this bit of whenua that we've purchased here. That started us basically in an environment court. We went through the consenting process. In those submissions, we told them, no, we're not happy with where you're putting this plant. What they didn't realise, and we told them very quickly, you should have talked to us before you purchased any land. Where you have purchased land, one happens to be very close to some anga koiwi. It's one of our burial caves, with one of our ki rangatira, who was in one of those caves. It was bones we put there. Not only that, from an environmental perspective, the land that they purchased was right between two lakes, and the land, so they're on a peak here, and either way runs down to two lakes. Now, why are you going to put it right next to the lake in that particular area? Quite close, like only a couple hundred metres from the lake edge if you went back in. Anyway, went through the resource consenting process. They managed to get through that. The commissioners decided, okay, te pai, it can go ahead. We then appealed it, took it to the Environment Court, and we won. And that really shook the council. And in fact, the judge at the time said, you need to look at yourself, council. The way that you've engaged with iwi and hapu here has been shocking. Look at yourself, tidy yourself up, do an audit, and look at new ways of doing things. That was really powerful for us because it gave us a bit of a lever to say things must change. Even your law says things must change. The other thing that happened around that time, around about 2013-14, is we got a new mayor. So Stevie Chadwick came in as mayor for Rotorua, and she brought a fresh whakaaro. She understood us as iwi, ko tōna hoa tāne he Māori. So he understood us and was willing to take a different approach. So as soon as she got in, she said, we're going to fix this. And the cool thing that happened, and we obviously had a lot of kōrero with her and other councillors, is he said, we need to develop this model. Us, not you fellas. Don't go away in your room and work out some model, then come back and say, anei te Arawa, here's the model for you fellas. So what we negotiated with them is, give us a bit of pūtea, we'll go and talk with ourselves, we'll wānanga within Te Arawa, we'll decide what kind of model that we want, and we'll come back and we'll present that to you. Let's go forward from there. I think that's an important point, whānau. Don't get caught up on whatever you get told, here's your options. You can have this model, or this model. You don't necessarily need to go down that pathway. Say, actually, no, I want to sit back and we want to have a whakaaro about our own model. So that's what we did. Spent a year going around to our various hapu and iwi, having kōrero about a new model. Also in that process, we looked at the different models that were happening around the rohe. We talked to the independent Māori Statutory Board, had a look at them. Very different context because they're set up under their own legislation, their own statute. We didn't have that as an option for us. And looked at a number of other models. Anyway, brought that model back, and I'll talk a little bit about the features of the model shortly, brought that model back to the council, presented it to them. We also said to them, when we presented it to them, we want you to take this out to the wider community in Rotorua and let them have a say on it. We knew that we had to get the whole community on board. It wasn't just getting that council on board. We needed to take it to the whole community. That process, in terms of submissions, attracted 2,000 submissions. And at the time, it was the largest number of submissions the council had got on any particular take that they put out to the community. Of those 2,000 submissions, it was about 50-50, 1,000 against and 1,000 for. And our people were awesome in that process. For our people to make 1,000 submissions is a big statement. We all know, you've heard the kōrero today, A lot of our people don't connect with this kaupapa. It doesn't interest them. One of the reasons that I think we got that number of submissions from our people was the way that we took that kōrero out to them. The principles that we talked about, the values that we talked about, we talked a reo that they could connect to. We gave them messages that they could connect to, and that inspired them, that touched their hearts, and then they said, I'm going to have a say, and they wrote their letters. Of those 1,000, about 500 of them spoke to their kōrero as well, their submissions. So there was a good, I think, week and a half of hearings and submissions of both sides sitting down and putting their case. Obviously, on the other side of those 2,000, the other 1,000 that were against, there was also a lot of kaki whiro, a lot of rednecks that came out. And we knew in our rohe, this is part of understanding our rohe, we knew that was there. Even though Rotorua as a town, when you look at it, looks very Māori. You go, oh, there's carvings there, there's reels around the place, te mea. And you might think, oh, kapai he taone Māori, noiho tēne. But there's still rednecks in there. We knew that they were there, and they popped themselves up from time to time. On this particular kaupapa, there was a bit of a groundswell of a number of them, and they had a go at us. Anyway, the outcome of that whole submission process, when it went to a vote, the councillors passed it, a majority. I think it was around about 8 to 12 in favour of the agreement. The next one. So really briefly, this is us doing a hikoi on the day that we presented the model to the council. So as Te Arawa, we walked from one of our key meeting houses, Tamate Kapua, down at Ohinemutu, and into the council. And again, that was a statement that this is important to us. We're here en masse. One of the interesting things about doing the hikoi is the kōrero that we had beforehand. So one of the kōrero, a key part of that kōrero that we had was he ngākau whakaiti. Let's be humble when we do this whānau. We don't have to fight because we know who we are. We know this is our place. Let's not be insecure and resort to, we hate you, bring the patu out. We don't have to do that. Be peaceful. Bring the wairua of our tupuna to the kaupapa. That will take care of things. And that's what we did. I suppose an extension of that kōrero was the values. And these are the values that Te Tatau o Te Arawa, the board that is Te Tatau o Te Arawa now, that they adhere to. These were also values that we talked a lot about when we went through the process of engaging with our iwi. Next one, please. Oh, actually, sorry, just what I want to say about those values is, it's really important that you bring our values. We've got beautiful values. We talk about them a lot. We don't always practice them. That's why we had that kōrero before we went. And ngākau whakaiti, we talk about that. Let's put it into action as we do this mahi. But those values are powerful. When we're true to them, we align with them, we behave that way, we can really change the paradigms that are out there. We also, when it was established as Te Arawa, one of the kōrero around the name Te Tatau o Te Arawa. So in Te Arawa now dialect, tātou, the word tātou, we don't have a macron on that first day, so tatau. Tatau also means a doorway. So the kōrero around this name Te Tatau was to acknowledge two things. One, that it was a he tatau, as in a doorway for our connection and our relationship between those who have come into our rohe and ourselves. It was also a symbol of he tatau paunamu, so our traditional practice of mending grievances that we have with each other. So often when we had war between each other as hapu and as iwi, after those fights we knew we had to restore balance in different ways. And so within Te Arawa and another iwi have different forms of doing this. We have a practice called Te Tatau Paunamu, and that was about restoring the peace between two groups. And to give, I suppose, physical manifestation to that whakaaro of Te Tatau Paunamu, we gifted this patu parawa, whalebone patu, to the council. Interestingly enough, this got stolen from council. We gave it to them, and we weren't sure when we gave it to them. We were like, oh, maybe we should keep it in one of our whare. And then we thought, oh, no, we'll let you have it in your whare. And they had it in a nice glass casing thingy in there, near their chambers. And some bugger one day managed to get it and take it away. Really interesting. So, everywhere, the whole community, the council, all these media releases, Te Tatau, got the media, put out a media release saying, where's this taonga, please bring it back. A lot of the kōrero for us within Te Arawa is, it'll come back. Whoever's got it, they'll either realise or it'll be taken from them in some way. The mauri of that taonga will bring itself back. And lo and behold, within 3 weeks or so, it was returned, and there it is. I think once they realised the kōrero behind the taonga, they're like, oh, I've really stuffed up this time. They took it back. The other image there on the right is an award that the council won for establishing this partnership. Okay, next slide. So just really briefly, I want to talk about some of the features of this model, just to give you some ideas in the mahi that you guys are doing. First thing I want to talk about is that box, that white box, that shows the representation makeup of the board of Te Tatau o Te Arawa. So essentially we set up a board. From that board we have members that then sit on the major committees within council. They have full voting rights. I want to talk really briefly about that representation on our own board. When we went around and had the kōrero about how should we set this up, who should represent us, really important kōrero came out about making sure that the various aspects of Te Arawa are represented. Different aspects being ngā reanga, our kaumātua, our pakeke, our rangatahi, our rangatakapu. So what you see in there is there's one seat for our koeke, our kaumātua. There's 2 seats for our rangatahi. So that was making sure we got the age spectrum at the table. There are 6 seats there for Te Arawa, iwi and hapu at large. So any Te Arawa, iwi or hapu, there's 6 seats available for people there. There's also 2 seats specifically for Ngāti Whakaue, which is only one iwi of all of the 13. That was deliberately done to recognise the gifting of the whenua. We wanted to honour that gesture of Ngāti Whakaue and make sure that they had some extra representation, and also because a lot of the CBD and a lot of the key mahi for the council is within their rohe. So 2 seats for them. We also established 2 seats for land trusts and incorporations. One of the things that I see in this space is that councils and central government tend to focus purely on iwi authorities or PSGEs. They forget about all of our land trusts and incorporations. And in fact, from a local government perspective, land trusts and incorporations are affected more so than PSGEs, particularly with regional councils, because it's all about natural resources. A lot of our settlement entities in Te Arawa anyway don't own a lot of land. But our land trusts and incorporations, they own, 25% of the land within the Rotorua district is Māori land. It's about 60,000 hectares. So we made sure there was representation for them, and then we made sure there was representation for Pan-Te Arawa entities, which were essentially our settlement entities that went across all of Te Arawa. The other parts of this model is, so what are some of those features in terms of the way they engage with Rotorua Lakes Council? So we've got 2 people that sit on the 2 major committees within council, so that's strategy and policy, operations monitoring, and also their resource management and consenting committee. Most councils do a lot of their grunt work in their major committees. The kōrero at full council, more often than not, and it depends on what council, but most of them operate this way. The full council is really rubber stamping decisions they've already debated in these major committees. That's why we deliberately targeted them. We also targeted them because legally you can't co-opt people onto full council. They have to be elected members, but you can do it with committees. So again, kind of understanding the law really helped. Actually, sorry, I forgot to mention this. As we looked at models, we also engaged some lawyers that looked at some of these technicalities for us, and they gave us the tips on, this is how we can get around that issue and this issue. We also ensured that the partnership came with some putea, because you can't do much without putea. We could have set up a board, but they would have really struggled to have the ammo and some mahi happening behind them to give them the right information to be able to advocate really well, let alone compensating them for the time and the energy that they put into the kaupapa. So it comes with $250,000 funding every year. And it also came with the expectation that we'd lead or co-design and co-deliver strategic projects, and that the council would change some of their practices. They'd look at themselves and say, and they did this really well, they said, how can we be a better partner to Te Arawa? We need to build our capability to be better partners. And so out of that, becoming a better partner, a few key things have happened. So they now have a Māori general manager role, so in that top tier of manager within council. Really important, I want to make this point, it's important that we have influence in a number of areas, not just at the governance level. So today's kōrero has been largely about governance, but it's also really important that we have Māori people with good capability in the operational side of things, key staff in the organisation. Because there's kōrero that happens at a governance level, but the implementation happens at that operational level. And if it's not translated well, you don't get the outcomes on the ground that you're after.
So think about that as well. And these are all things that we can do now. We don't have to wait. Let's find our people that are onto it in the space and really push to get them into these roles. More recently, they've also established a Arawa Partnership Strategic Facilitator role. And again, that's at the senior level. This person will sit in the executive leadership team. So essentially, we'll have 2 Māori in their senior management team. We've led the Reo Rotorua program, so there's a program happening within Rotorua to get bilingual signage everywhere, to get reo happening all over the place within shops and so forth. We're in the process of developing a Taurua 2050 vision, so a collective vision for ourselves. Like many iwi and hapu, we fight amongst ourselves and we've got a number of different opinions amongst ourselves. So this Taurua vision is about finding the collective good, the common aspirations that we have and common issues, and putting that in front of council, as well as guiding our own kaupapa as a collective waka. We've also influenced the council to establish a bicultural competency program. So every employee in Rotorua Lakes Council at some point has to go through this program. And I understand at the moment 70% of their workforce, of about 350 people, have all gone through this program. So that program involves a noho marae. So they'll go and stay on the marae, they learn about our tikanga, they learn about our kawa, they learn about our history. And that's about helping all of that staff in that organisation understand who we are. So the next time they're working with us, they've got that background. They understand why we're mamai at times. They understand why certain things excite us and other things we don't. I don't really care about that. That's been really important. The other things that we've looked at too is public-private partnerships. How can we potentially invest in some of the infrastructure that councils are developing? So please. That's the day that we signed the partnership formally. So I'd gone through its process in the council and got agreement there. And then we had this event at Tamatekapua, one of our ki marae within Arawa. Just wanted to put that up there just as I suppose, a beautiful symbol of 2 peoples coming together. Because there's a number of white faces in there amongst us Māori. And it was important for us all the way along that we celebrate this stuff together. So that's a quick kōrero on te tatau o te Arawa, and that whole process. Just a couple of points I want to raise there. It was a long-term journey. When you think about 1880 to where we are now, that's how long it's taken us to get here. And it's a journey, whānau, we haven't reached the destination. We never will reach the destination. I just want to paint that picture, because sometimes we think once we've got the model and we've got the sign-off and we're in there, we're at the table, kei te pai, we've sorted everything out. E kao. There's plenty more mahi to go. So, yeah, keep that in mind. Okay, so I'll katahuri ake au ki toi moana, so Bay of Plenty Regional Council. So I'm in my second term as a councillor there representing all Kure as one of the Māori wards. I'll just tell you a little bit about the history of establishing the wards there. We were, I suppose, a little bit different to anyone else who's trying to establish Māori wards now, in the sense that the legislation wasn't there at the time. So the establishment of the Māori wards within the Bay of Plenty has its own legislation and its own statute. That went through a process, so essentially it started from both iwi and council saying we need Māori representation. And both iwi and council championed this kaupapa and took it out to the wider community and said we want to establish Māori wards. Now, Judge Chapsky was the judge that heard this whole case, went through the Environment Court and decided whether it should be established or not. And he made this statement: parliamentary Māori seats had set a precedent. Māori seats in council is in accordance with the constitutional principles of law. It's the right thing to do. It's pretty obvious. You're willing to do it for central government. Why isn't it the same for local government? Because for me, he tuakana taina, central government is just a tuakana to local government. They're all the same whānau. And sometimes they disconnect themselves and don't necessarily talk to each other. I do moan to Nanayama about those things at times. But anyway, it's the right thing to do. The precedence is already set. But then when the legislation was established, it has this stupid little rule. I'll leave this kōrero to Andrew about this 5% bloody poll that the community can overturn your decision. It's the only ward, only form of representation a community can overturn. If you decide we want a community ward for Waitangi, for Paihia, you can do that. And legally, the community can't say, "Kao, we don't want that." Well, they can't have a poll and stop it. But a Māori ward, yeah, they can stop it. For me, and I think Andrew said it's inherently racist. Every other ward, kei te pai, Māori wa e kao. We're going to have a little hook in there that can stop you fellas going down that path. Heoi anō. We're very fortunate in the Bay of Plenty. So that bill got drafted in 1999 and it was passed in 2001. The first election that had Māori wards was in 2004. And there were 3 Māori wards established. So there's formulas for how many seats, wards that you get. It's basically based on population. So we've ended up with these 3 wards of 14 seats on council. 3 of us are Māori. So we're now 15 years down the track. So it's 4 elections. So we're in the 4th election cycle. So we've had a fair bit of time to have some influence. Just a couple other things I want to point out about the Bay of Plenty context. Bay of Plenty has a number of iwi, so there's over 37 iwi. It keeps getting higher with treaty settlements because karahake ngā iwi, there's new iwi popping up all over the place. There's that, but there's also cross claims. So hauraki weren't so much of a feature in the Bay of Plenty, but recently that's changed, so that number keeps growing. But what's interesting is that 37 odd is a third of all the iwi across the whole mutu. There's about 100 iwi across the whole mutu. So 1/3 is within our rohe. That helped our cause because you had all of these iwi, all of these different iwi and hapu views. I'll go to the next one. So what are some of the impacts, the tangible impacts that we've had in terms of that council? I think the first thing for me is it's the influence on the mindset and the values, the paradigms. That's the first place that you've got to start. You've got to change that wairua first, and then the action, the physical starts changing. So by us being there and sharing those values and being pretty staunch about the importance of these values, we've started to shift the way that council thinks. Now, regional councils focus on natural resources, and some of the whakaaro that we bring, that's very natural for us, is really powerful in this space. Just the whole kōrero, the concept about our whakapapa to the taiao, that we are descendants of the natural world. We are related to Ranginui and Papatuanuku. We are one. That really changes, if you can put that message across in a powerful way, changes the way people think about natural resources. It's not just somewhere, that lake isn't just somewhere to have some fun and ride my jet ski and drink a few beers around it or whatever. That is me. My life was that. If I don't look after that, I'm killing myself. And I think there's a consciousness growing in Aotearoa and the whole world that if we continue the way we are as humans, we ruin te taiao, we ruin Ranginui and Papatuanuku, we ruin ourselves. Our children won't be here. That why that you mentioned earlier, e hoa, ngā uri whakatipu, that's exactly what this kaupapa is about. We've got to make sure that we look after this place for our future generations. So we've changed that mindset, and then that's flowed into changing the actions and the operations of council. So some of the practical things around that, resourcing and capability. We've got a Māori policy unit that has about 10 staff. I know a lot of councils that have the one token iwi liaison officer, and I feel sorry for those people. That's hard mahi. Hard mahi to do on your own. Even in a team it can be hard, but there's not much resource. So we've got 10 people there, around about a 1.3 million budget that supports just that Māori policy unit. But we've also established specialist kaupapa Māori roles. So one of the things we're conscious of is don't just set up a Māori policy unit and they're the go-to for everything Māori. We knew we had to start having influence across the whole organisation. So we also do Māori competence training within the organisation. So our Māori policy unit go around and help train the rest of the organisation so they understand things. But then we've also established some new roles in key areas. So one of the challenges for us is getting mātauranga Māori into the science and the planning and the processes of council. So recently we've established a Māori scientist role, and that person's there to bring mātauranga Māori, and so they understand mātauranga Māori, but they're also scientists. So they're bringing those two worlds together. Because what I've seen in the space is that you need to be a translator. You need to be able to take our mātauranga Māori and work out, how does that look in Pākehā terms in these ways that Western science works. So that's one. Another one is around a Māori planner. So we've got now a Māori planner that sits in our planning team. We also have a Māori RMA advisor. So whenever consents are happening, they have input into that. One of the key things they do is they help hapu and iwi with any responses that they're doing to consents. One of the struggles that we're hearing from iwi and hapu is they really struggle. Now they've got a relationship, they're part of decision-making processes, e.g. they get to have a say on consents, but they're just struggling from a resource perspective and a capability perspective to respond to all that and do a good job. So we established that role so this person can help them. We also have a Committee Māori. So Committee Māori, the way it operates is all our hui on marae. And there's 3 of us there as Māori councillors. Depending on what part of the rohe we're in, that person will be the chair of that hui. And at all of those hui, the first half of the hui is just listening to whatever kaupapa haukainga have. So we don't go there and say, okay, we're going to run our hui in your place. We've got an agenda. We don't need to hear from you. The first thing we do is, what's your take? And they can tell us whatever they want about what's going on for them, and we work out how we can support them. Within our rohe, we've also got 3 co-governance forums that have come out of treaty settlements, and we've got another 2 that are about to hit in the next wee while. And we also have kaupapa Māori funding, so we've got scholarships for environmental sciences, anyone who wants to study in that environmental space, any Māori person. We've also got a fund for Māori rōpū that want to do environmental projects, and we also have a fund for iwi management plans. So a niu and a hapu can develop a plan around how they want natural resources to be managed within their rohe. So that's a few things. There are a number of other things, but I just want to give you a taste of some of the impacts that we can have over time. But like I said, it starts with changing that wairua, changing the values, showing them a different way of looking at the world, and then drilling down to the next step of let's turn that into action in the way that we do things. So, kua roa te kakau o taku paipapea. I can see a few people moving, so I better wrap it up there. Tēnā rā tātou katoa. Kia ora rā.